Thank you for coming to my talk today. Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be back at How. I will admit in advance that I hate standing still, so I'll probably go like this a few times, and then just make a signal and I go back because I like to move around and make sure that I connect with everyone. So thank you for coming to what I like to call affectionately the death slot at How, because we all would rather be either taking a nap or having a beer right now, but you came to see me speak, so thank you for that, and I will do my best and I'll let you down. Beer later, yes. That guy's buying, and I will be there. So again, thank you so much for coming out. I'm really excited to give you this presentation today because this is actually a new thing for me, not speaking, but this way I'm kind of talk about something I'm really passionate about. And it really started here a year ago. I've been able to come to several Hows over the years. I think this is the 9th I've had the privilege to be on the program. For some reason, they keep asking me back. I think it's because I know Stefan Mumau, and somehow that is beneficial. No one laughed at that because it's really not that funny, but that's okay. But one thing that I do, and hopefully you're all doing the same thing, is obviously I take notes and write down things. And on the plane ride home, I've come into a habit of making sure that I kind of read through that. Because when I get back, and as we all will experience when we get back, life takes over, right? And so you kind of leave here drunk on inspiration or other things. And it's important for us to make sure that we write down the items that are important to us. So this is a page from my sketchbook. And the reason why I show you this is because last year I kept writing down words like passion and heart. And you guys don't know me that well, but every year I kind of give myself an initiative. And my initiative every year is to concentrate on one topic or subject matter. So if you've ever seen me speak before, last year I talked about how to be a better storyteller, and I did that through movies. I love movies, and it was a great reason to do a lot of research and watch a lot of movies. The year before that I talked about wonder, and so I thought this year I really want to talk about passion and heart. And right after, I talked last year, I had an opportunity to have lunch with this guy. I don't know if any of you have seen Luke Micey speak, but he's a really interesting and inspirational guy. And he goes, "Hey, Jess, I want to have lunch with you, and I want to tell you about this idea that I have." And I was like, "Great, let's do it." And so we're sitting there talking, and he starts giving me this list of all these things that he's going to do this year. And I started giggling, kind of like a schoolgirl. And I said, "That's incredible that you have this list, because I have a very similar list. And so what are we going to do about it?" And that's what I love about this conference, is because you come here and by a show of hands, this is very scientific, how many of here come here because they want to figure out a way that their work matters? Right? Who doesn't want, let's do it this way, who doesn't want their work to make an impact? Come on, be brave. Okay. And so this is a topic that I often think about and I talk about, and this is what Luke and I were talking about at lunch. And, when I was looking at my journal, I thought to myself, I want to really explore this concept of passion. And for this talk, a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about is heart and passion are interchangeable. And the reason why they are is because I think that we as creatives have like this secret little energy inside of us, right? The way we see the world is very different than anyone else. And I'm really fascinated with this concept of how do we explore that? How do we get into that? How do we let that power our day-to-day? And so for me, similar to the heart, right? Without it, our bodies don't work. Sounds simple, but for me, I'm a simple guy and I really wanted to break it down. And so when I started just kind of researching this concept of passion, I came across this quote. And the more I thought about it, it's really true. How do you explain passion to somebody? And especially when our passions are so different. Add on to the fact that we're creatives. What is it the hell that we do? I tell my mom what I do, and she's just like, it's funny, my mom is a flight attendant now, and she was telling someone what I do. And when she got done explaining it, I was like, "Oh, Mom, thanks so much. But, I do a lot more than color. there's some strategy in there, and, I try to make a living at this. And I love my mom. She's great. And so often when I think of a topic, I try to run it by the people that are really the ones that are most important in my life, and that's my family. So I'm a dad of 4. As you can tell, little guy doing the Bruce Lee sidekick, he has a lot of passion. And it's funny, I asked him what passion was, and he just goes, Dad, that's when you make out with another girl, but I'm not supposed to talk about that. And I was like, how do you, forget it. But really, one way to talk about passion, I was talking to my dad I'm like, Dad, what do you think about when you think about passion? And it was fascinating to me. I was getting all these different answers. And so my dad, he's an Ohio State Buckeye fan. And so all he talked about was passion for sports. Yeah, Buckeye fans out there, awesome. Half my family are Buckeye fans and half my family are Irish fans. Don't know how that works. It works somehow. But we kind of get the idea of crazy fanatical fandom, right? That's a form of passion. And then you also have these guys that are really interesting, like these nutballs. And I love that. I love that form of passion. In fact, a lot of us here are that fanatical about what we do, or at least we want to be, but we kind of lose some of our energy around it, right? So I want to share a little story with you, and that was, I'm going to kind of use this sports thing as an analogy to kind of talk to you about why I started getting into this topic. And my mom had me when she's in high school, and that's an awkward way to start a sentence. But what was amazing about my mom is that she worked so incredibly hard to take care of me. She didn't get to go to college because she needed to raise me. My dad was kind of out of the picture. And she worked in the restaurant business. And when I mean restaurant business, I'm talking about that she was a waitress. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful. I always felt loved, and my mom was amazing. But one of the things that we did a lot was we moved around a lot, because when she was able to get a better restaurant, we'd move. And so when we do that, I would switch schools. And for many years, I would go to 2 or 3 schools a year, which is a little challenging. And my mom always would say, honey, I love you. Just, you need to kind of figure it out and all that sort of thing. And so one thing that I realized that I had as an asset was that I was just taller than most people at that point. Not like Steph and Muma tall. Steph, stand up for a second. Look how tall this guy is. No, come up here. I wasn't this tall. But at the time, I was taller than most kids. And so I thought, if I was going to fit in, that maybe one way I could fit in is be good at sports, which was weird for me because I was a creative. So I was the kid in the corner drawing things, right? I read comic books, and I like to go into, different things and reading and talking about different things with my friends. And so I decided if I was going to kind of integrate myself with the community, I needed to be good at sports. And so I wanted to share this picture with you so my friends can heckle me. So this is my offensive line in high school. I was number 70. I know I look very intimidating and scary. That sweet flat top, by the way. But I share this because what would happen is I would go in and I would become a good teammate and I'd work hard, but there was always this different part of me that I couldn't really relate to anyone else. Like a bunch of my buddies, they would go play sports all day, which is great, and then I would go and I'd draw, right? And that was just me, so I was kind of always had this tension. But as time went on, I was like, that's just who I am, and that's cool, and so I kind of used the whole sports grades thing to get into an okay college. I was asked to play football at a small Division III college, and my first day of practice, I blew out my knee. Luckily for me, I picked a school that had a decent art program, and I remember I picked up an intro to graphic design class, and I walked into that class, I crutched into that class, and I sat down, and when in the first half hour something really beautiful happened, I was like, that's what I am. I'm a designer. And as time went on, I found that passion. I kind of went after that, but then also my knee never really got better. And so at a very young age, I had this sweet knee replacement. As my son says, I'm bionic, even though he's disappointed in my vertical leap. The part of the story I really want to kind of highlight is that I let this sort of knee thing kind of be an excuse. And last year when I was having lunch with Luke, I was really struggling. I had a lot of fun presenting this concept of storytelling at How. but I was really struggling with life. And part of that is because a few months before that, I had done a half Ironman. Actually, I did a third of a half Ironman. It's still impressive. I did the bike portion, right? And so my friend sent me this picture. And I was like, who's the big dude on the bike? That can't be me. And I was really struggling with where I was concentrating and focusing my time. And I realized that I was feeding some of the wrong areas of my life, literally. And so I really want to explore this concept of passion and heart and work-life balance, and to figure out a way, could I feed my life in a way that would make my creativity flourish? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about this concept of your heart, and as your heart has 4 chambers, and these are what I'm calling the different elements of passion. So the first one is your gifts, okay? Then it's your habits, your perspective, and your reality. In my opinion, these 4 parts make up your true heart, the one where your passion lies. But before we go there, let me define what I think passion is, okay? Because this is really important. This is what I think from a creative perspective and through our careers, this is how I define passion. Passion is whatever brings out the best version of you. So passion is whatever, I can't even say my own quote. Passion is whatever brings out the best version of you. And I think if we really are honest with each other, that's the kind of work we want to do, right? We want to do work that brings out the best version of us. That when we go through our day-to-day, we really love and dig what we do. And that was something I really wanted to explore, and I want to share some of those things with you. But first, a question I get a lot is, how do you find your passion? So I'm going to give you some initial thoughts on that, and then I'm going to kind of go back to that question through the whole talk, okay? And for those of you who have never seen me speak before, I tend to give you more questions than answers, and that's by design, because I think we all are uniquely different. And there is no one magic bullet that will answer the things that you're looking for. And so hopefully I'll give you some nuggets that, that you can build off of here. By the way, who saw Seth Godin this morning? Yeah, should we just record his thing and like go home and drink beer? I mean, that was awesome. I was like punching myself in the face because I had this anxiety and fear of failure, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. Anyways, total side thought. Squirrel. There was a great commencement speech given by Drew Houston, who's the founder of Dropbox. And he was talking about successful people and passion. And I love this concept when it comes to trying to figure out kind of what you're all about. He says the most successful people are obsessed with solving an important problem, something that matters to them. They remind me of a dog chasing a tennis ball. That really kind of makes sense to me as a creative, because I feel like I'm that guy a lot, but I'm chasing the wrong ball, right? I'm the dog that you fake it out and I run, and you're like, damn, where's the ball at? And so if you get a chance, his name's Drew Houston, Google the talk, it's really great, and he's got a really wonderful beard. So that's one way you can think about passion. Another way to think about it is, think about the things that matter, the things you can control, and where those 2 things overlap, that could be a very interesting place for you to focus. Okay? So I'm going to keep coming back to that, but let's first talk about, so let's say you know what your passions are, right? Where your heart lies. Now, what do you do with it? Well, I'm here to talk today about these 4 elements and how I think that I'm going to define each one, but they really need to be looked at somewhat equally. If you spend too much time in one area, it throws off the other areas, right? Just think about your heart. If one doesn't work the way you want it to work, then, the rest is going to be all janky, for lack of better terms. Janky. It's funny. It's like Scooby-Doo. So let's talk about gifts. I'm going to play for you a little video clip from Tiffany Slane. So one of the great things about watching 150 movies in 1 year, by the way, where are you at? 62. Okay, so Stefan has watched 62 movies already this year. That's impressive. I did beat him last year. But anyways, I got to meet Tiffany Slane, who's an independent filmmaker. And she just put out this film recently. And it's about character. But when she says character, I want you to put the word gifts in there. Because I think she really gets at the core of what I'm trying to talk about here today. So here you go.
There are 7 billion, well actually 7.1 billion humans on the planet. And each one of us has a unique character.
So what determines your character? You do, and all the people around you.
And of course some genetics too.
But there's new science proving that if you focus on certain parts of who you are, you can develop your character.
And ultimately live a more meaningful, successful, and happy life, no matter what your circumstances. I mean, isn't that what we're all trying to figure out?
Oh, what? I love that, dude. I feel like that like every morning. What? But to build off what Seth was saying today, I really like the fact that he talked about focusing on what you're good at. And I think that we have a choice every day, right, to deal with the situations and the reality that we have and be the best version of ourselves that we can be, right? We have that choice. That's like step one. We have that decision. I know it sounds really simple and trite, but we need that reminder sometimes. Because, you know, I'm going to kind of give you a client story here in a minute, but we've all had those frustrating moments. And it's how you handle it that really kind of adjusts or directs the rest of your day. And I think when you're talking about your gifts and trying to identify what they are, I think one way to think about it is that the gifts are the vehicles to get at what your passion is. And I think that the first gift that, you know, you guys all know what the first gift is, and that is that you're creative. Do you believe that? I know sometimes we don't feel creative, and sometimes people make fun of us because we're creative and we're weird and awkward sometimes. At least I am. But then the next thing I think about when I'm trying to define what my gifts are, I think about, does the percentage of my work align with what I'm passionate about? And so another way to think about this is the concept of the way you use your superpowers. And you've probably heard people talk about creativity this way before, but it's really true. I mean, think about where ideas come from. It's incredible, right? Like, I don't know where my ideas come from sometimes. I don't know why it always happens in the shower, but that I'm good with it. The idea part, that is. And I think that, you know, when you think about your, you know, what's uniquely, what we're all about is the fact that, you know, when we look at the world in images and shapes and colors and fonts, I mean, who does that? We do. And so it's really important to make sure that we embrace that. So one way when you're thinking about your gifts and in comparison to your superpowers, let's think about this right now. I want everyone to think about, what was your fave project this year? All right? If you need to, write it down. What was your favorite project this year? Now think about, why was it your favorite? I'm not going to give you any guidance beyond that, but just think about, why was it your favorite? Okay? I'm willing to bet that most often the projects we love the most are the ones that are most aligned with who we are. Okay, and let me dig into that a little bit more. What I mean by that is the jobs that we love the most are the ones that either are aligned with what we're passionate about. So if you don't know what you're passionate about, maybe it lies within that favorite project. Or they're mission driven or for the greater good. That's something I'm very in love with and concerned about and really push myself for. Or, and this isn't a bad thing, the way those projects made you feel. Tell me when. No? Okay. The way you make you feel. And I think it's okay to look at your work and think about your favorite projects, be like, oh, that maybe won an award, right? Or I got recognized for it. Or my peers appreciated what I did. The way you made you feel, that's okay. But I think what's important about that is understanding the pros and cons of each one of these things, right? So, for example, things that match your passions, maybe the work that project you did, maybe you don't have a lot of projects like that in your studio or your office. So that could be challenging, right? Because you want to do more of that type of work. Or maybe you don't do a lot of mission-driven or greater good work in your office, or so you don't have that opportunity, so you're going to have to find those options, right? Or the fact that you do the work because of the way it makes you feel, well, maybe that's not a bad thing, but then how do you sustain that, okay? And so when you're thinking about these things all together in this little melting pot of trying to figure out what your passions are, it's really important to be honest with yourself and what your motivations are, because that gets you down to your habits. And so when we're talking about habits, I think the easiest way to talk about them is the fact that, I love this quote. As you can tell, I'm Mr. Quote Guy. I love the fact that habits can be summed up as we become what we repeatedly do. And I think as creatives, we can talk ourselves into bad habits. Okay? So let me give you an example. I started my career in Arizona, and I became a young partner. So I was a partner in a young design firm, and I was young, which means I didn't know what I was doing. And I took every job I could to prove myself, and I took every job that I thought I needed to do to help the firm get a better name. And so when I was in Arizona, I had this opportunity to meet Alice Cooper. Does everyone know who Alice Cooper is? Yes? No? For those of you who don't know who Alice Cooper is, he was a pretty huge rock star back in the day. He's kind of known as the father of the rock show. So if you've ever been to a concert where there was like a show that happened, he kind of is credited for coming up for that. And if you get a chance to see him, he actually still does a pretty good show. I mean, it's uber creepy, but it's totally worth seeing the drama. It's great. But anyways, I digress. So met Alice Cooper, and he was starting a nonprofit in the Phoenix area, because at the time Phoenix was one of the fastest growing cities in America. And he wanted to create a center where kids would have alternative options versus just being on the street. So they could learn music, they could be tutored, they could just play and have fun with other people. And so we're like, hey, we want to totally do this, but none of my partners wanted to do it. And so I said, hey, you know what, we'll go and I'll do it on my time, we'll do it for free, and it'd be great, right? So when we first started working with him, it was fantastic because, you know, I got to work with a celebrity. It was the first time my mom thought, ooh, Alice Cooper. Nice, son, way to go. And the work we did, you know, was pretty good. I think one of the fun things that we did is we got to work with photographers from around the country that we really loved. But then something really interesting started happening. And that was Alice wanted to start coming up with these super cheesy themes. So, for example, he wanted to be Astronaut Alice one year. And right around the time he wanted to become Cooperman, I figured it was time for me to, like, really be honest with what was going on. And that was simply this. We were doing this free work for him because we thought it was cool, and we're getting our name out there. But we weren't doing it because we cared about the mission anymore. I was doing it because we got to write about it, we got to take clients to these types of things. And those are not bad reasons in itself, but if that's why you're doing the work, that's a problem. Because I have found that the work starts to lose its soul. And, like we heard this morning, if you don't say no, and you don't fight for your ideas, you end up doing Pirate Alice on an iStock image of a pirate. Or Special Agent Alice. Or the one that I really discovered that I had totally gone overboard was Disco Alice. But can we talk about how good that Photoshop work is there for a minute? I mean, seriously. Because that's not him. I make light of it, but I think this whole concept was light on reality and really heavy in time. And so one of the things that we tend to do is we convince ourselves that the kind of work that we're doing is worthwhile, and we got to do it because of these reasons. But I think it's really important for us to check ourselves of why we're doing that work. And I'm not saying this is easy. This took me 12 years to get out of this assignment. And now, let me say this, by the way, Alice is a lovely dude. I like him, but he's just not the kind of client that we want to work for. And so when we talk about habits, I think another way to say it is to be what you do. And what I mean by that is, I'm not just talking about your work at this point, because often with what we do as creatives, our personal life kind of eeps into it, right? And so I think it's really important to kind of look at the spaces in between there. Call that life kerning. You should buy the book. Sorry. That was horrible. You can punch me later for that. No, but I think it's really important to make sure that we understand the things that we're doing repeatedly. So what is it? What are the things you're repeatedly doing that's good or bad? And like that video I was talking about earlier, and I think we even talked about that this morning, is we tend to focus on the things that we're bad at. I'm not sure why. I think this is kind of how we're brought up. Instead of focusing on the things that we're great at and making those even greater. And so make that list. And then from here, are these things, these habits that you're doing, are they helping or hurting your pursuit of your passion? And I think it's really important to look at that. Because I think, and here's another perspective to look at it. I used to hate these kind of questions, but now that I'm a dad and I talk to my kids, my daughter's turning 14 tomorrow. And asking her about the future is amazing. I should have recorded it and had like her interview on here. She's like, oh, I don't know, Dad. I'm going to marry, Zac Efron, and things are going to be great. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening in my life? But anyways, if you were to write this down, looking back in your career from now, years from now, and it could be 1 year, right? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, what is it? How do you want the story to go? Is it going the way you hope it is supposed to go? And I think, like I was telling you earlier, a year ago, I was in a much different place. My design firm was doing okay. I was kind of struggling personally. And I said, you know what, next time, if I get a chance to come back to how, I want to completely change it. And I really want to realign the things that are important to me and spend my time and pour my time into the kind of work I want to do. And so I started asking myself these questions to really make sure I was in alignment with those things. So I guess my question is, where can you change your story? And that really gets us to the concept of perspective. This is an area that I've spent a lot of time in. And the reason I did is because I decided that about 8 years ago, I wanted to do the kind of work that served others. And I had no idea how to go about doing that. How can I, as an individual, and how can I, as a design firm, serve those around me? And our sort of mantra at Rule 29 is to make creative matter. And so what that meant to us was I wanted to have a voice in the design world, and so I volunteered for AIGA, and we did that sort of thing. That's why I'm here, is because I really want to be a part of conversation and community. And then, we also worked locally with, we did like the Alice Cooper thing, but we also did stuff like local food kitchens and all that sort of thing, and that was great. But I really wanted to explore this more. So about 6 years ago, I literally just kind of looked at the world like this. And it's funny, at the time, I was really kind of exploring this concept of extreme poverty and kind of what was going on in the world, and then really I just kept coming back to Africa. And I thought, why Africa? What can I possibly do there? And so about 6 years ago, I went on my first trip to Africa. I went with a photographer buddy of mine, and we had connected with a nonprofit called Life in Abundance. And we went there to see some of the work they were doing. And they were working in some of the hardest of the hard places in the world. It was just awful. And we were able to do a bunch of work, like strategy, donor strategy, all that sort of thing, kind of the typical branding stuff that you might think we would do. And it completely shifted and realigned who I was as a person. And I brought that work into in-house and kind of sort of made my team do it, right? Because it was important to me. And what was interesting is that my team all started to shift. they started to care about the work in a totally different way. And they started getting excited and asking for this type of work. And I thought, this is awesome. This is working better than I could have imagined. And then they said, hey, can we start going on these trips with you? And I was like, wow, I'm not sure I want to afford that, but yeah, let's try to figure this out. And so as time has gone on, we've done this work more and more and more. I'm going to get back to that. And this year, one of my team members came to me and said, hey, you know what? Can we shift our focus and still work in Africa, but can we focus on water? And they gave me this whole pitch of why water is important to them. And what happened is we started working with this organization called Life Water, which happens to be the oldest water organization in the States. You guys have probably heard of Charity Water and Living Water and all that sort of thing. Life Water does a lot of their work. And they would do what you would think they did. You know, they did well work. But they were really interested in this whole community development and storytelling aspect. And they really loved the way we thought. And they wanted us to come in and help them tell their story. And so I went over there for about 10 days to Uganda and started going through their process. And, you know, we came back, and what was really interesting is people started saying that all the pictures I had, I was much more involved in them. And I hadn't realized that I was. Like, I was carrying one of those jerry cans. By the way, they're like about 40 pounds. And there was this just wonderful, like, 12-year-old girl that, like, would just whip it up on her head and walk around. And here's me, I'm like, whoa, and I'm carrying it. And it was, like, super heavy. My neck's, like, all compacted. And I'm like, she's like, you know, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And I'm, like, weeping inside, you know? And then this other guy on the bike, it's funny, they gave me a nickname. It turned out it was translated Big Donkey. I don't know why it was Big Donkey. But I ran with it. And this poor guy, I think I gave him a hernia, because he's like, I can haul you on my bike, Big Donkey. And so he took me on his bike, and as you can see, I eventually was riding the bike by myself, because he was like passed out on the side of the road. But what I had realized is that I had gotten out of my comfort zone and was kind of living out this kind of work to where I felt really comfortable and wanted to engage in a different way. And I never would have kind of put those two things together had my team not thought through that for me. And so we did, just to kind of show you some samples, we did, you know, the work you'd think we would do. You know, we did their, you know, their collateral materials and helped redo their donor strategy on their website. And it was a lot of fun. But the thing that was most interesting to me was just the conversations that we had at work. Everyone had really shifted. And the way they shifted was that their perspective had changed. And by that I mean they saw their work differently. They finally thought that the work that we did mattered. And the people that we're serving halfway around the world, to which only I was able to meet them, they were touching them in some way. And they were excited. And that was really important to me, because I'm going to tell you about, in a minute, kind of where my team was before that. But here are some observations that I made from that. And that is, you can only learn to see different when you step outside of yourself. You're going to hear that, I'm sure you're going to hear that a lot this week. It's one of those things that I think anyone who's had this kind of experience will say. But I'm not saying, by the way, you need to go to Africa for this. Now, I do. I need to get away from my cell phone, and my family knows I love them. I need to get away from my kids. And I need to be in a context where I cannot not pay attention. And for me, that happens to be sub-Saharan Africa. Because when you're there, it's completely opposite of my day-to-day. Some of you, maybe it's literally going up to a speaker this week and meeting them. It can be that small of a step to start seeing the world differently. Because here's the one thing I know for sure. We only grow when we are outside of our comfort zones. And I think if we were all honest, we would say that we want our work to expand. We want our work to evolve. We want our work to matter. And it can't do that if you don't push yourself that way. And I'm not talking about pushing the type of work you do. That's easy. We're made for that. I'm talking about getting out of your day-to-day and possibly shocking the system. And so this is basically me saying, get out there and do it. So I also want to tell you one of the tricks that I use. I can't go to Africa every year. I can't go there as much as I want because my wife would totally leave me. And it's also not smart to do that too often because, you know, I still need to run my company. But I wanted to share with you something that I play myself about twice a month. And this was a little series of clips, and I keep adding to it. And I edit things out of my trips there. And I play this for you because there's, you know, we're talking about this morning about the reminders we need to have to kind of shift our perspective and to understand that we're very fortunate and that we have a decision of how we're going to approach the day. And so this song haunts me, and these visuals do. So I just want to share with you, one of the tricks that I use is I watch this video, and sometimes I make my team watch this video. And they are like, oh, I gotta watch the stupid video again. But I change it up on them. So this is one tactic that you might use, but this is my little see different video.
There's a house built out of stone, wooden floors, walls, and window sills, tables and chairs warmed by all of the dust. This is a place where I don't feel alone. This is a place where I feel at home.
So that last scene of that video is Kibera, and it's one of Africa's largest slums. And I always put that in there because it was one of those moments I had shifted. I had never known the slum to be that big because I'd only been in it. And you know, it goes on forever, but when you see it from a different perspective, right? Going with the whole theme of what we're talk about here, it's really changed the work that we do. So I watched that video because I really want to continually adjust my reality. And what I mean by that is, you know, reality is defined as the world of, or state of things as they actually exist. And I think that's interesting because it's really in opposite to the fact that often we have a different concept of what our reality is, what the impact our work can make, and just what's possible in our day-to-day. And I think along with that is this concept of time. I mean, time is that thing that we want the most and that we just suck at using, right? At least I do. And so if I'm going to spend my time doing this job that I'm doing, I want to make the greatest impact possible. I want to make sure that my work and my life are kind of working together to make this happen. And so going back to last year, I said, am I the only one that feels this way? So I went back to my team and I took a little survey. And I said, and this, you could do this too. I said, all right, guys, let's talk about where you're at personally and where you are with the quality of work that we're doing, and I just want your thoughts on it. Where do you feel we're landing, right? And this is kind of where we ended up, which as a leader is not the greatest sort of array. If you don't know, we want to be in the top right where things are fulfilling and enjoyable, right? And the great part is that's all changeable. That's all within our grasp. We can change this. You have the ability to do that. No matter what your circumstance is, you do have that power. And over the last year, I'd surveyed them actually right before they came. And I think some of them are kissing my butt because I'm not sure it's this high, but they said we're more in this area. So let's just say, for the sake of this talk and how wonderful I am, that that's true. So when I talk about reality, I like focusing on this concept of how you can change it. And so, you know, I said this a second ago. You know, we tend to look at different reasons why our reality is the way it is, and that's really just kind of bullshit. And what I mean by that is it's as simple as how you approach that job. Yeah, there's one of the designers that I have. He's been with me for 6 or 7 years. And for the first 2 years, you couldn't talk to him before 11 o'clock. He was brilliant, and he was great from like 11:01 on to the rest of the day. And I said, hey, we got to figure this out because you're kind of a douchebag in the morning. And I really don't want to deal with you. Pardon my douchebaggery there. And I said, you have the ability to, when you wake up, to be in a good mood. This isn't my crap. This isn't my responsibility. Seems really simple, but we all have that attitude, right? Like when a certain client calls on the phone, you're like, oh my gosh, happy place, right? And then you're like, hey. But we have that ability to change that. And my point is you have to be active. You can't, it just isn't going to just happen on its own, okay? And when you're talking about design for good type work, this is just kind of a side note, you can't do work just for the feel-good factor. That does not work, right? That's why I was doing the Alice Cooper thing. And one story I forgot to tell you, it's funny. I had taken clients to the tournament, and some stuff had come on screen. They're like, you did that? And I was like, no, that had to be someone else. That wasn't us. You can't just do the work just to do the work, right? I mean, I know we all have the work that kind of keeps the lights on type work, and that is what it is. But in general, you can't do that kind of work just for the feel-good factor. I'll tell you more why in a minute. It's pretty obvious, but I'll focus on that. So let's talk about how to define your reality. So I'm a list maker. How many of you are list makers in the room? Be honest. Oh, awesome. You sick bastards. Let's see. How many of you, if you do something on your list, write it on your list just so you have the joy of crossing it off? Yeah, we have problems. And the reason I'm a list maker is only because I have a very short memory. And so there's times, have any of you ever written something on a list and you go back, or like written something in your journal and you're like, who said that? That is brilliant. And you're like, oh, that's me. Crap, I'm brilliant. It doesn't happen to me as much as I want, but the reason I do that is because I want to make sure I'm recording those thoughts, because when you have that moment of inspiration, something really magical happens. And so, anyways, so let's define your reality a little bit. So what are your needs? What are your needs either personally, or let's just focus on your career. What are the type of needs that you have in your day-to-day, right? What are those? So they're different for everyone. Again, I'm not going to over-define that for you, but now from there, think about what your assets are. I'd be giggling right now at this question, but what I mean by that, think about your network, the type of clients you work with, your experience, your opportunity. You know, where can those lead you? What kind of assets can you come out of that? Because I think what's really important is when you start thinking about that, one way to change your reality is to make up your own initiative or project. So I'm going to tell you about two. I'm going to tell you about one that kind of failed, and I'm going to tell you about one that is going on right now, okay? So the first one that I worked on was something we call the Give Project. And we still have this at Rule 29. And my concept was, I'm going to give 20% of my time and work away to make the world a better place. That was just part of what Making Creative Matter was. That was our thing. And everyone loved it. It was great. And then something really weird happened. I went to give my team bonuses and salary, and I didn't have enough money. So my advisor was like, you know, maybe, jackass, it's because you're giving 20% of your time and work away. And I was like, no, that's not what it is. And so next year I gave 23% of my time and work away and had the same problem. And I tend to be stubborn and learn things the hard way. And doing things for the feel-good factor or just to make an impact obviously doesn't pay the bills, but even more so is irresponsible. It's irresponsible from a business standpoint, but it's also irresponsible for those nonprofits that we're working for. What are they going to do when we're gone? Suddenly start paying someone? Right? It was our responsibility to kind of help them figure that out. And so a year and a half ago, we stopped doing work for free. We do work at a discounted rate. We do work where we well define the parameters, and we do it for a set amount of money. But we just couldn't do this the way we wanted to. Okay? So that didn't work out the way I'd hoped. But actually it's working better now. We actually have more of this work, and we're getting paid for it, and everyone's happy, and it's great. And so, going back to my lunch with Luke, he was telling me about what he was doing, and he knows I'm a list maker. He's like, well, make a list. What is it that you want to do? And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do this. How can I create a project? And so your list can be this kind of zany, right? So I wanted to create a project that I could learn from, right? Some sort of design project of something I hadn't done that I wanted to learn from. I wanted to do a project that would help LifeWater. That was just, we were working on their brand at the time, and I was about to go to Uganda, and I was really kind of interested in that. And again, you can put anything on your list, right? So the next one was, can I do something that gets me in shape? What kind of design project can I do that would get me in shape, right? We all want to have that design project. What can I do that includes my whole team? Can I do a project that makes an impact? Can I do something that creates new opportunities for all involved? Like my list went on and on, right? So I would recommend not making a list this long, by the way. And something that increased new client potential. And I wanted to do this list because I wanted to change that chart that you saw, right? I wanted to bring my team with me. And I feel that the only way I could do that is if I'm part of it. And I make sure that they're engaged with me. And so when I got back from Uganda, I said, guys, I have an idea. LifeWater has developed this program that for $40 you can give water, sanitation, and hygiene education to people for life. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the How conference, and I'm going to ask them to have me be like a closing keynote or something. And at the end of the talk, I'm going to rip off my Velcro suit, which I don't have one, by the way. I was kind of disappointed that this didn't work out because that would have been great to have one. And I was going to have a riding jersey underneath it because none of you want to be looking at me in spandex for an hour. And I'm going to ride my bike from Boston to Chicago. And you're going to help me do it. And we're going to figure out a program around it, and we're just going to help raise money, and we're going to learn some of the digital goals that we had and talk about social media, and we're going to get a bunch of people involved, and it's going to be amazing. And so they thought I was crazy. But we sat and had a team meeting, and everyone's like, yeah, let's do it. So the How thing didn't work out because How this year's a little earlier, and the weather, as you can tell, is not great outside. So me riding my bike to Chicago right now is not the smartest. And so we started creating this brand. So we created this brand called Wheels for Water, and we had this website, and we started kind of raising awareness and exploring the options. We got a lot of cool people involved and started doing some poster design. Here's our state posters, for example, that will be available soon. And I'm telling people about this, and turns out that a guy that lives a town over from where my office is an ex-Tour de France rider. So his name's Christian Vanderveld. He's become our coach. We did merchandise and all this stuff, and it's been amazing because we've had all these people join us in this program to really make a difference. And what's been humbling to me is that this has grown into something that's bigger than what I possibly can imagine. And it all started because I made a little list and shared it with my team and said, I think we can do this. What do you think? And so one of the things we also wanted to do was get better at After Effects. This isn't the greatest After Effects thing in the world, but I just want to share with you a little bit about the ride here. So that was our little project. And what's been really incredible is that everything on our list is happening. We learned a bunch of new technology. We've raised a bunch of money for Life Water. I had to lose 80 pounds to be able to do this ride. It's included my whole team, and we have a lot of people involved, and it's been incredible. And I think that's why that chart has changed. And so what's great about this conference is that this all started over a lunch conversation, right? With a guy I'd sort of known. He was a fellow speaker, and we've been holding each other accountable this whole time. Luke's lost over 100 pounds riding his bike, and that knucklehead sold his design firm, and he's going to ride his bike from California to the East Coast and start a nonprofit to help malnourished kids. So you can go that extreme if you'd like. But I think the point is sometimes what we need to do is create our own reality, and one way to do it is start an initiative. So just as a little side plug, tomorrow morning at Nina, I'll be signing a poster for Wheels for Water from 8 to 9 in the booth. If you'd like to come get one, I'd love to meet you and say hi. So in closing, I really want to focus on these 4 parts of what I'm calling passion. And I think that we have an opportunity, and you have an opportunity over the next couple of days to really think and talk and be inspired by your superpowers and those around you. And discovering what those are and making those habits being what you do, that is so incredibly important, because that will change your reality. And anytime that happens, your perspective adjusts, and then your world becomes more colorful, more beautiful. At least that's my take on it. And I think that if you don't pay attention to those things, you know, if we call the heart something that helps our body go, then you really miss out on all the potential you have in front of you. And so I'll leave you with this. There's no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. So I hope when you leave this conference, you get something from all of us speakers, you create whatever your reality is, and you go after it. Thanks.